You cannot grow as a nonprofit and be at your best unless you have differences at the table. So that means sometimes you got to shut your mouth and listen. Sometimes you have to elevate other voices that are not yours. But we cannot get to where we claim to want to be if we stay a monolith, if we stay focused on just one thing. We have to know that there are so many voices that deserve to be there, and we got to be quiet and listen to them, even when we don't agree.
Holy crap, Ashley, isn't Dawn just the most amazing person you've ever heard?
Matt, I had the hardest time editing this episode because every single thing she said was even more amazing than the thing before.
I know. I'll tell you something. Every once in a while when I do this show, I feel really stupid and I don't know what I'm doing. And with Dawn, I was like, I don't even need to be here. Whatever you're saying, you're ridiculous. She's so amazing. And I am so happy that we got her on this podcast.
So what you're saying is that Dawn not only does her own job amazing, but she could also do your job better than you.
Let's be honest, Ashley. Anybody could do this job better than both of us. Like, we shouldn't even be allowed to do this show.
Dawn, are you going to edit the next podcast for me? Just let me know, give me a call.
Yeah, no, seriously. And on that note, I'd like to welcome our audience. My name is Matt Kamen, and I am the co-founder of Envision Consulting and podcast host of this nonprofit on the rocks, which is season 5, episode 2. And I love this new format where we are talking about nonprofits on the rocks, leadership on the rocks, and enjoying a drink on the rocks. And with us, as always, is Ashley Watterson, our mediocre producer. How you doing, Ashley?
I'm about 5 pounds heavier than the last time we spoke, Matt. I don't know. I love Thanksgiving, I'm sure as we all do, but truly, I might love the last day of the holiday where I dumped everything out of the refrigerator and at the same time put up all the Christmas decorations. So it was like very much an ushering out and in day because I just can't go on any longer eating the way I ate for a week. What about you?
Let me share something with you that I learned that's going to blow your mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So I love stuffing. Stuffing is by far my favorite part of the meal. And as you know, I don't eat carbs. It is the one day of the year that I allow myself to eat carbs. You know this.
That's amazing. I do know this.
Okay. Here's what I learned. You can take your stuffing, stick it in a waffle maker, turn it into a waffle, and then use it as your bread on your sandwich to put in the turkey, the cranberry, the mashed potatoes, whatever the hell you want to put in there.
Shut your face. Where were you 3 days ago? Because my favorite part of the Thanksgiving meal is taking all the pieces of the Thanksgiving meal and turning it into the sandwich. You may have changed my life because I have the little mini waffle maker. I feel like you gave it to me for Christmas.
I don't feel like I ever give you a gift. I don't think you deserve a gift, how you produce this show.
Now I wish I hadn't thrown it all away because at least I would go and just try that. I'm gonna have to wait a whole year. This is making it much harder to go and have my lame ass protein shake that I'm having for lunch every day from now until Christmas. So thanks a lot, Matt, for making my cleanse that much harder.
Anytime, Ashley. So that was my Thanksgiving. That's what I learned. I have to tell you, again, this interview with Dawn was just so amazing. And I thought this was really interesting talking about executive directors. And my favorite question was when we had that one executive director talk to us about hating their staff so much and not wanting to be there anymore. That really, it kind of struck home for me because I'm not trying to point any fingers, but I kind of get it.
Yeah, well, here's hoping that I get to keep my job a little while longer. I was going to take a moment to, since we're still giving thanks, to just say to you, Matt, I'm so thankful for you and for this show and my job. So hopefully that carries a little weight.
Since we are talking about Thanksgiving, I am very thankful of all of the folks that we've interviewed because I like their stories and I think their stories are important. There are some really great shows out there to go back and listen to.
You can find our whole catalog of shows wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find more information about our show on our website, envisionnonprofit.com/podcast. podcast.
So, as you know, Ashley, this episode was all about when you should step down as an executive director, when you should become an executive director, any issues being an executive director of a nonprofit. I just want to remind everybody yet again that Envision Consulting is a national recruiter in nonprofits. We do a ton of searches. And so if you are looking to be an ED, just take a look at our website, reach out to me. If you are looking to replace your ED as a board member, take a look at us. We do that as well. And on that note, is there anything else, Ashley, that you would like to share with our listener before we let them listen to Dawn Brown and her awesomeness, everything amazing about her?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say something? I was busy making a stuffing waffle iron sandwich.
Hello, Dawn Brown, one of my all-time favorite people in the world. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I am good. Thank you so much. That's such a perfect introduction, and I appreciate that so much because you are one of my favorites as well.
Oh, I love a love fest already. So we are both exhausted, and this show is going to be like, we're going to get our energy back somehow, but I'm really excited to do this interview. I've been wanting to have you on the show for so long, so this makes me really happy. And before we start, you tell me, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking a glass of Chardonnay. So that is what I am having.
I'm going to be honest with you. And you know, when you go on a plane and they give you those little bottles. So I stole this little tiny Woodford Reserve bottle from American Airlines, and I am going to drink this tonight. So I was already a little hammered when they gave it to me. So I didn't want to finish it on the plane.
Not just stealing bottles off the plane.
You know, like, you got to know who I am. Like,
Hey.
so cheers, my friend. Okay, so you and I met years ago, and I tried, well, just so everybody knows, obviously, you know, like, if you're listening to this show, we do recruiting. That's a big part of what we do. And I wanted to place Dawn at a phenomenal organization, and that's how I fell in love with you. So met you, interviewed you, fell in love with you, and I knew then, and I now know, of course, now, just how kick-ass you are as a leader. And so, like, first things first, Dawn, why in the world do you want to be an executive director?
You know what? For me, being an executive director is less about the idea of the power of the title. And it really is about being able to create a vision, introduce a vision, and then support people in executing that vision to support others. And so for me, being an executive director is really about making sure that my vision is executed properly and that it is serving the people. And for me, that would be people of color, specifically girls and women of color. So it is about nothing else but being able to serve the people in the best way possible. And I believe that as the leader of an organization, I am in the best role to be able to make that happen in a way that is done with care and is done in an equitable, justice-based way. And so that's why I do this. It's not because I want to all the time. It's really because I've been called to do it.
See, I love that. So we have a lot of questions from the audience tonight that I'm going to kind of ask you in between, but you know, I've got some questions for you too, and I want to talk about Empower Her in a bit because I want people to know about the organization you're at. I absolutely want people to give to it, so I'll have some time at the end because I want you to make a pitch. But like, first things first, having like all of the accomplishments that you've had, this is a real unfair question. What like are you most proud of that you have been able to do as an ED?
Oh, that is a tough question. I think different times in your life, there are different things that you're proud of. Like I think about my past, and I would say being able to change laws in this state and in this country. It's a big deal, and I've been involved with doing that. But for this part and this time in my life, being a Black woman is extremely present and important to me, and I think to the world. And the thing that I'm most proud of at this point is being able to support girls that look like me to reach their fullest potential, and specifically to come into a small nonprofit. I came into a nonprofit, Empower Her. We've been around for 20 years, but when I came in, it was in 2020, in the middle of a pandemic. We were operating at a $380,000 budget, serving 300 girls at 4 schools with 2 staff members. And we actually ended up in a negative that year. I was able to take that organization and grow it, introduce a whole new vision, make a shift in our vision as an organization, but also introduce new values and a real 6-year plan around growth and expansion. And we are now in the 3rd year of that plan. And I've been able to, in that time, grow the organization to now operate at a $2 million budget, serve over 1,000 girls a year at 13 schools and a community site with 15 staff members. And so I'm really proud of that because this has been a tough time. I mean, I came in 2020 and we are facing a recession as a country. And somehow or another, we've been able to grow. And that means making real impact. And so we have girls that are in college, who are college graduates, who are doing just powerful things. And to be able to be a part of that is the thing I'm most proud of. And so as a leader, to be able to take a small nonprofit and grow it at a time that when many nonprofits were closing their doors, I cannot be anything but proud of that.
So I said at the beginning, you're like the most kick-ass person. And I just want people to hear, like, you said it quickly, but I want people to hear, like, you went from 370 to 2 million, from 2 staff to like 6 times that, right? Or 7 times that, whatever it is. In COVID, this is what I'm saying. You are a rock star. And I was at your gala a few weeks ago. And not only, by the way, are you amazing on stage and give a good speech and throw a good party, but I got to tell you, that dress was everything. It was everything.
Thank you. I feel like that is my Cinderella moment. So every year I get my dress custom designed. I sit down with the designer and we design the dress. And I always pick a woman of color to design the dress with. And so I'm really proud of that. Johanna Hernandez from Glaudy, she's the person who designed my gown.
Yeah, that was, well, you know what? When we post this podcast, we always post certain things from the show. We will post her information on the website so people could go visit.
Yes, that would be great. And I had my custom designed sneakers on because it was a sneaker ball. And that was done by Jerry Coco. So I'm happy to share.
Yeah, I know. That was, such a cool event. So I know who gave me my drive to do what I do. Who gave you your drive? Like, who helped you get to be who you are?
So there are 2 really specific people who helped me in 2 specific ways. From a leadership perspective, that would actually be my high school journalism teacher. She was my creative writing and journalism teacher. I went to a high school of the arts. I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts in Washington, D.C., and that's where I graduated. And I studied journalism and acting. And so this teacher, she has since passed away, but she was so impactful in my life. And at first, I couldn't stand her. When I first started as a student, I was like, I don't like this lady. She is so hard on me. Every time I look, she is there with her little eagle eyes trying to tell me what I can and can't do. And always giving me extra stuff that the other students say they don't have to do. And so I really had an issue with her. But she pulled me out of class one day and had a conversation because she was like, I know you got an issue with me. And let me talk to you about why I give you such a hard time. I see potential and I see leadership skills in you, and you're not living up to it because you just want to hide all the time. You just don't want to be seen. And she was the first woman who said to me, playing small does not serve the world. So you playing small does not serve the world. And so that, has resonated with me to this day. And she ended up actually making me the editor of the newspaper and giving me all these leadership opportunities. And I walked in one day and now had a desk that said editor-in-chief in the classroom, my own desk, and with a computer and 2 screens on it. And she was like, you're going to lay out this paper, you're going to edit this paper, and you're going to make sure that it goes to print every month. And I was responsible for doing that. And she was literally hands off and made sure that it happened every month. And when I slacked off in my senior year and was like, I'm just, a senior year, I'm going to slack off. It didn't get done one month. I just knew she was going to do it. I came back and that paper was still laying there. And she was like, this is your responsibility, not mine. And so she gave me real leadership opportunities. And when she saw that I was like, oh, my internship is just going to be working in the attendance office, she was like, absolutely not. You're going to go and intern at a newspaper. And then in the summertime, you're going to go and intern at this nonprofit organization. So, and you're going to be writing scripts. And so she was like, you are not a secretary. You know what I mean? Which is nothing wrong with that. But she was like, that's not who you are. So you need to hold on to who you are. That has played such a big role in my life. And so, you know, to have someone believe in me, to see me, and so for me to be that young, I was 14 when I met her, and for her to see then leadership skills and say, I'm going to trust you to do these things, and I'm going to step back and I'm going to watch you shine, really meant something to me. And so she played a big role because it was the first time that I heard that I didn't have to play small, and it wasn't helping the world for me to do so, that I was meant for bigger things.
I love that don't play small. I think that's awesome. And, you know, the same thing happened to me with my fifth grade teacher. That's who changed me. But what do you think she saw in you? Like, I am always so curious about this, right? Like, teachers see things in kids, right? So, like, what do you think she saw in you that she was like, this is it, this is the person?
I have absolutely no idea, but I think she saw this thick little Black girl who had a big voice, who was talented, but was afraid of stepping out in front of other people because I was always afraid of being teased or being different. And I always felt like I was different. And so I just wanted to fit in and not be seen. And I think she saw that. And, you know, she was like, oh, you have the skills, you have the knowledge base, you're smart as all get out, and you got a big old voice. So let me give you a mic to use it. And I think that for her was it. Like, I think this girl could really be bold. And so she gave me the opportunity to be bold. I remember her saying that other teachers had talked about how I was too quiet in class, but I would write everything down and I'd have all these opinions. Or when they called on me, I'd always be like, well, this is what I think, but I only would speak if I was called on. Other teachers told her that. And so she was like, okay, I know what to do with her. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Dawn that I know. So I'd love to go back in time and meet that Dawn who was 14.
Right.
Did you ever go back to thank her or talk to her?
I did. I went back when I was in college because she made sure that I got a college scholarship that was named after her father. So I went back a few times when I was in college. And then I kind of fell off because I moved to New York. And so I wasn't in DC anymore. So when I heard of her passing, it really sort of devastated me. Miss Howard.
It's so amazing to me that all of us have like this one person really who like changed our lives. We're so lucky to have that, right? But you said you had two. So who's the second person?
Yeah, and the other one would be my grandmother. My maternal grandmother, I lived in the house with. And so I watched her be philanthropic and really be her own nonprofit without me knowing that that's what she was doing. I grew up in the projects in Washington, D.C. I grew up quite poor. But my grandmother was like everybody's grandmother in the neighborhood. Low income housing looks different in DC. And so I lived in a 3-bedroom house with a backyard and a front yard. And she had flowers. She kept everything beautiful. And so people would literally stop by just to see how beautiful the garden was. But this was during the crack era. And so in DC, and it was during a time when DC was considered the murder capital. And so there were children whose parents were so addicted to drugs that sometimes those children were, you know, extremely dirty, filthy, didn't get cared or fed for days. And they would come knocking on the door just saying they were hungry. And my grandmother always fed them. I remember coming home one day and these little girls were sitting there in my clothes in the living room eating. And I was like, huh.
That's funny.
And I remember just being like, I know, right? And she pulled me to the side and was like, don't you ever. Like, even with the lack of what we have, there's so much that you have. They need this. And so it's our responsibility to take care of one another. And that was how she saw it, is our responsibility to take care of one another. The word charity was never used. So I grew up seeing that, understanding that, and then watching her also bake cakes in the neighborhood and sell cakes to make money so that I could go on field trips. So I watched her be an entrepreneur and be, you know, a giver in the community and a philanthropist in the community. And so that, when you look at what I do today, I mean, it only makes sense that she would impact me.
Where do you think she got that from?
She got that from her mother and her grandmother, because she grew up in a domestic violence situation. And so she watched her father abuse her mother. And as a result, her mother made a decision to leave. My grandmother actually threatened her father. She watched her father beating on her mother one night, and she grabbed a knife and threatened him in order to stop him. And she was a child, a young child at the time. And so she knew at that time, we need to leave because he's going to come after you next. Her mom was a maid. And so she moved in with the woman who was a white woman whose house she took care of. And the woman opened her home to her and said, come and live here with your child. And so she grew up. Her mother always made sure that everyone else was taken care of. And so she watched that growing up. And her mother told her that it was collectively our responsibility as a community to take care of other people, to take care of each other, because one day you're going to need them. And even if you don't, it's just our responsibility to do. And so that was how she grew up. And that's what she instilled in me.
It's so interesting, Don. I feel like, in certain ways, we've sort of like lived parallel lives in the nonprofit space, because my fifth grade teacher was the one who saw me. I mean, I was like the laziest person in the world, getting all D's. And she did the same thing. She was a pain in the ass. She like pulled me aside. She gave me extra work, but she was the one who made me actually become an A student. And then my grandmother, same thing. My grandmother is the reason why I do nonprofit. My grandmother came here with no money, also had a DV issue, and she saved all her dollars and started, investing it for herself, but she never spent money on herself. She always gave to everybody else. And
Yep.
I think we in nonprofit learn how to do this. I've talked to so many people, and I think it's so many grandmas who have instilled in all of their grandkids. It's really amazing. So yeah, I really believe you and I are very lucky to have had those people in our lives. And I hope that most people have like this strong figure that gets them to care. That's really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I had no idea. See, I'm learning so much about you.
See? All right. So I have questions from the audience. We do have like one or two listeners. So tonight's show is about being an executive director. And this is the topic of this show is A, why, and B, what do I do when like shit hits the fan? And C, maybe it's time for me to leave. What do I do? We'll get back to your story in a minute, but I'm going to ask you some questions that we got and tell us what you think. Right. So the first question I think is actually like, I do recruiting for a living. I try and tell my candidates exactly what I know about the organization because, sometimes it sucks and I don't always know. So this question is from Alex. He actually lives in DC. And here's his question for you. I'm concerned that this was a bad decision. I never asked the right questions, and now I'm worried about my job. How can I figure out whether the challenges I am facing are temporary or if they are indicative of a deeper issue that basically requires me to leave? What do you say,
All
Don?
right, Alex, I've been there. I get it. I understand what's going on. I think there are a few things to think about. One is think about the morale of the staff, and what is the experience of the rest of your team. That'll help you to understand if this is a deeper issue or if there's something that you are doing, right? So, first of all, is look at that, because if it is something that's deeper, then other people are having challenges within that. And when you're new to an organization, people are willing to tell you everything. It's after about 6 months that they won't. So I always take the first 6 months to learn. The other thing is, for me, I always used to stop and be like, am I crazy? Or is something really going on here? And I would doubt my own instincts. And so I would say, trust your instincts. That's extremely important to do. If your spirit is telling you that this is not the right fit, then act on that. If your spirit is telling you that there are things that you can do to make adjustments, then act on that. But trust your instincts, because they are not going to lead you in the wrong direction. And then
Yeah.
the third thing is to sit down with whoever you trust on your board. So, who is your biggest ally on your board? Sit down with that person and get to know that person, and then start asking some real questions. And they will be able to help you in understanding and indicating if this is a deeper issue or not. And then you move from there. You figure it out from there. You make a decision.
I think if Alex asked us that question, it seems to me that he knows what the answer
Yeah,
is.
I think so. I think so. That's why I'm like, trust your instincts, Alex. Yes.
So I don't want you to name names, but have you ever made a career change where you were like, oh shit, that was
Yep.
not what I should have done?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I took a job that it had a nonprofit name that folks knew. It came with a pretty salary that I hadn't seen at that point in my life. And so I said, I'm going to take this opportunity. And I was taking over for someone who had been in a position for almost 20 years. And it was a disaster. It was tough. My team was constantly just lying. They were just deceptive, right? And that person didn't leave. They just moved into a different role. So the person who was in the role before as the executive director, they were hovering over. And there was a lot of stuff that was unethical. There were a lot of issues. And then I also worked with a board that was all white and mostly white men. Matter of fact, all white men. And they would make comments like, I remember the board chair saying to me after me having a meeting with him that I had wore my hair natural that day. It was curly in its natural state. And I had been wearing it straight before then or weaved up. And so he looked at me and he said, I don't know about this. You just look real militant today. I hope you change it back to what it looked like before the board meeting. And he really thought he was giving me advice. Right.
Wow.
And I remember the previous ED who had returned into my boss saying to me, your white male COO, who you supervise, let him speak, who had less education, less knowledge in the meetings, because it would just make them feel more comfortable. I remember these things, right? These experiences, and I kept trying to make it work because I was like, there's something wrong with me if I don't make this work. And so I finally realized that it wasn't me, but the truth of the matter is that God will move you when you choose not to move. And he did. And I was embarrassed and afraid and scared at the time. It took some time for it to fall in place, but it fell in place. And what it told me was, oh, this wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. God had told me what my calling was, which was girls of color and women. And I had shifted to something else and a space where honestly, it wasn't about giving and it wasn't about justice and it wasn't about supporting the community. And so, I had to make those shifts. It wasn't easy to do. It was not easy to give up that salary. It was not easy to give up that name and all of the lovely benefits that came with it, because there are beautiful benefits when they find out that you run this organization. And I got to tell you, I'm a better person for it.
There are shows where I'm like, God, I hate people. I guess all of our experience in lives make us who we are, sure, whatever. But like, that's horrible. I am sorry that you had to go through that. That's ridiculous. I don't like wishing bad things to bad people, but like, hopefully something came around on that guy. Who knows?
Oh, things came around, but we won't discuss that part. It took some years, but yes.
Good.
Karma
Good.
hit them hard.
Good. Good. Okay. So that actually begs a question, and I'll get back to staff in a minute because I have a hilarious question that I love from one of our audience members. But when somebody is looking to take a job, right, to take an executive director job, and they don't want to get into a situation like that, what do you think are some really good questions that a would-be executive director could ask the board before they take a job?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I think moving into the position that I have now, EmpowHER, I was unapologetically Dawn in the interview. And I only was brave enough to do that because of the fact that I thought I was taking another job. Like I was like, I'm doing this as a courtesy. But then I fell in love with this job and was like, I'm gonna take this job. But I was able to ask questions that I had never asked before, answer questions honestly, because I think it's not just about the questions that you ask, but also how you answer questions. And then also, I was very thoughtful about the questions, looking at what the questions were that they asked me. And one of the things that I like to ask any person that I interview to hire, and I do the same now when I am being interviewed, is what are the deal breakers here? Right? So what's the deal breaker? If this happens, we are going to lose faith in our CEO. I think that's a fair question to ask. What are the deal breakers? What are the expectations and what is it that you truly are looking for beyond what the job description says? And if they just go back to the job description, you're like, okay. The other thing is, what are the challenges that you are facing right now, and what would you like to see in the next 5 years? I need to understand if they have a vision and if it's a clear vision. And then how comfortable are you with change? That is a question that I always ask, because one thing that I've learned about myself is that that's who I am as a leader. I'm not a leader that can come in and do the status quo. I am a leader who is best when I am being put in a place where there's going to be a shift or change. A lot of times, because of the fact that where the world is now, people are hiring Black women more, but we're being hired to fix messes. And then when we can't fix it quickly, then they're ready to get rid of you. And so you were often the first stepping in. And so I have had opportunities, many, where I was the first Black woman to step into a role. So if that is the case, then I'm going to call it out, and I'm going to say, how comfortable are you with this? And what is a realistic timeline that you're going to give me to meet the goals in which you have laid out? And do you think these goals are realistic? So I think those are really fair questions. But the other part of it to ask, and I think those are questions that you got to ask, and then start asking the questions about the numbers, ask the questions about the mission, ask them about what the vision of the organization and what the values are of the organization. Look on their website, do your homework, go on GuideStar, or Candid is what it's called now, but look at those 990s for the past 3 years. That's important to do. So many people don't. But I think it's so important to do that, because then I pull those out and I'm like, okay, so this is what this said. You telling me a different number. Help me understand how this happened, right? Ask those real hard hitting questions, and then also ask if you can meet with the staff. If they don't give you the opportunity, ask to meet with the staff, because that's where you're going to find out the deal.
Yeah, no, you definitely want to meet the staff. It's interesting. So one of the jobs that I took, I thought I asked all the questions, by the way, and I did ask a lot of the questions, but the board didn't know everything. And so I walked into this organization where they hadn't actually paid their staff. They didn't make payroll for 3 months.
What?
And the staff stayed. They hadn't paid payroll taxes, so that was bad for the board, but also they hadn't paid their bills. So 2 of the staff went to the hospital and they didn't have coverage because the company didn't pay for their health insurance. And I asked all the questions, but the board didn't know. And that was crazy. So that's always something that, you ask all the questions, and I love the questions you ask, but holy crap, if the board doesn't know, that's terrible. So that was not a great experience for me.
That's amazing. That is crazy to me. And I got to look at this board with a side eye, and I got to look at leadership with a side eye. And that makes me also ask the question with the board around, how do you see your relationship with the CEO? Because if they're not saying that they want that CEO to be transparent, the way they answer that plays a big role. And that is helpful in that way. But the truth of the matter is, Matt, that we can ask all the questions in the world, and sometimes we come into a mess. That just sometimes happens. I worked at a company that was a complete mess, and they wanted me to save it, and I couldn't save it. It was a mess. But I remember the CEO coming to me the first day and being like, I can't stand this staff and I can't stand this job anymore. And he was the founder. He was like, I want out. And I was like, oh, Lord, what did I get myself into? And so he never told me that in the interview. He was all smiles. You know what I mean? I didn't know that was how he really, truly felt. And at that organization, there were issues with the organization, but there were community issues that I was like, oh, I missed all of that. I missed the politics, right? And so I didn't ask about the politics because I didn't realize how it played into that particular organization. Politics play into every organization, but it really played into that one when it came to how much control funders had on a nonprofit, which is never a good sign when funders have control of a nonprofit. So we can ask all the questions in the world. Sometimes we just end up in a mess.
Right. I know. You know what I think we should do? I think we should have a list of questions that people should actually ask before they take an ED job, which the whole of the world. Okay. So that gets me to my favorite question, Don. I love this question so much. Okay. So this question is from Alana. By the way, I don't know if these are the real names of people or not, but so this is from Alana. She's in Milwaukee and she runs a nonprofit out there. And she said, all caps, I hate my staff, all caps. What do I do?
Well, Alana, why do you hate your staff? Sis, I need a little more information. But seriously, you are the CEO, right? So you are the executive director. I have a bunch of questions for you in order to really answer this question. It's hard to answer it just from that question and give you a fair answer. But what I would say is that you are the executive director. I would question how long you've been there, what kind of environment you created, and then what kind of real power do you have? Because I've been in positions where they were like, we hire you as the CEO, but don't fire these 4 people. They are horrible people, but don't fire them because they've been here so long. Whew. And now that's my deal breaker. Like, if I don't have freedom, then that's not going to work for me. And so are you in that kind of a position? Or is this a situation where you have the power and you're just not utilizing it when it comes to the choices that you make around your staffing? So I would ask those questions. Here's the other thing, because Lord knows sometimes my staff, it was a couple months ago, I called my executive coach and I said, do you think I can get away with murder of my staff if I explain the situation? Because I think any jury would understand why I had to strangle this person. And she was like, look, orange is not your color. Like, this is not what you want to do, right? But the truth of the matter is that we are dealing with a different generation, right? And we are all trying to adjust to the expectations of that generation. And that's something that we all have difficulty in adjusting to because of the philosophies and the culture and the differences in that perspective. I think that that can play a role in how you feel about your team as well. But I would just overall say, Alana, like there's a lot of things that play into this. I got to ask, what role are you playing in this? What power do you have in making change? And then, sis, is this the right place for you if you are at a place where you just don't like nobody? Because hate is a strong word. If I'm using the word hate on something, then I got to start questioning if that's the right place for me to be, because that's a strong word.
That's my next question for you is, being in charge is very lonely. When you're an executive director, CEO, it's lonely because you're it. And you have a board of directors and sure, but you're still it. What do you do? Because I have this question a lot from people, right? So what do you do to not be lonely? What do you do to get some love from other people or energy from other people or community from other people? You are in charge of this organization. Everything rests on you.
I am so glad that you said that, because it is very lonely. And there are days when I have to sit there and I have to listen to my team complain. And I'm just like, you don't even know. Because there's so many things I can't say, I can't explain to them. And it can be extremely lonely. I don't have a higher up to complain to. I don't have someone that I can blame at the end of the day. And even if it ain't my fault, I got to take the fault. One of the things that I say to my director of programs is when, and I've said this to my chief of staff, when the organization is thriving, it's my fault, right? Like it's because of me. And when the organization is down in the dumps, it's my fault. It's because of me. And that's how the board sees it, right? Like the buck stops with you, right? Even though the board plays a huge role, right? But, I get the bonus or not. And so it can be very lonely when you know all the intricacies, that there's other things that were involved in that. I've been having a tough time the last couple of weeks dealing with a whole bunch of weights. And so one of the things that I love to do is I box. I do it 4 to 5 days a week. I have a personal trainer that I meet with and we box it out. And what I love about him is that he does a check-in with me first. And then we start our workout, and it's a traditional workout. And then we go into boxing. And he worked me out so bad. I did 10 rounds yesterday. And then after doing 10 3-minute rounds, which is intense when you're boxing, he then said, one more round. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, this is an F them all round. And he was like, just throwing up the mitts. And I just had to hit. He was like, it ain't hard enough. F them, F this, F that. And then literally he was just letting me hit. Like I was wailing. Like I was just like, bam. But I didn't know how I could hit that hard, right? But it was genuinely like, for me, my meditation. And I always say that may not be yours, but what is your meditation? For me, that's mine. Yoga doesn't work for me. I get annoyed. I'm like, this is foolishness. I don't want your butt in my face. It's a lot of stuff going on with yoga for me. But this is my yoga, right? I say, find your space of meditation, 1. And 2, get a therapist. That's important because you got to be able to vent to somebody. And then 3, your loved ones are going to be so important And your network is extremely important. Because I didn't have a network out here, I started a women's academy at my nonprofit organization, and then was like, and I'm gonna launch it with the Black Women's Nonprofit Leaders Forum. That's for Black women execs and like and directors, right? Like I was like, I'm gonna build my network. And so that was this first time I had the space where I said, this is why I did this. And women were literally in tears. Like women were coming up to me, and to the point where I was like, I'm only doing this one time. And they were like, no, you got to do it every year. But they literally were like, sis, you just told my story. I'm going through this and I had nobody to talk to. I thought something was wrong with me. And so you got to find a network of other EDs, even if it's just 2 or 3 people. You don't have to start a whole department for your organization or a whole forum. Listen, there's a lot of work and there's money that I got to spend on that. But, you know, do find your network of other executive directors, other CEOs, whatever your title is, your role is. Find that network of people and meet with them on a monthly basis. You got to do that in order to stay sane. You cannot do this work alone. You got to bounce ideas, but you also need somebody to just vent with you and know that you're not crazy, and to tell you when you're wrong. You know what I mean? Because sometimes that's part of loving, supporting, and healing. But you got to have that. You need that like-minded person. Nobody else understands the challenge but those people.
I'm asking now, next time that you have a meeting with your group, I want to come. I'm inviting myself. I want to be there. I want to hear the stories. I want to be right in the middle of it. I haven't been an executive director for a while, but I still want to hear the stories. So
and we be putting it out there. We be honest with it too.
Okay, I'm showing up. I'll bring the booze. I'll bring all the booze.
I was gonna say always over booze. You got to have some booze.
We started this show with being in charge and like, what gets you there? What gets you excited? And we're at that point now where like, it sucks to be an ED, but it doesn't suck. It sucks and it doesn't suck. You're creating this legacy. You've got this vision. You're building this organization. You are serving 18 trillion more kids, right? Like that's ultimately what we want to do. So, okay, we got all the crap, but you know that your vision is what is keeping you there. But truly, Dawn, when you wake up in the morning and you know you're going to that job, what is it that gets you out of bed?
Yeah, girls that look like me and come from where I come from. I work with girls. 96% of my girls live at or below the poverty level. That's where I grew up. That's how I grew up. And that's the thing that I can't let them down, right? And I don't even see them every day, right? But I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I have to go into the classroom just because I need the energy. But I don't even see them most days, to be honest. But that's the thing for me. Everybody got to figure out what it is for them. But for me, that's the thing that gets me up. I take this very seriously, what I do, because it really is about changing lives and changing the trajectory of young women's lives. And so that's the thing that gets me up in the morning. Because let me tell you, there are days when I am like, I'm going to sleep in. I can't do it today. I am done. Right now, we have a whole bunch of government contracts and they are slow to pay, honey. And it's impacting my cash flow. And I'm like, oh my God, there are days when I'm just like, I am failing, right? But then I have to remind myself that when I look in that mirror and I go to brush my teeth, the first thing I see in front of me, that's who I'm serving every day. I'm serving little Black and brown girls who look like me and their families. And I can't let them down because they come from the communities that I come from. This is bigger than me. And that's the thing that I always have to remind myself. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than Dawn getting to speak out at some fancy event, Dawn getting to get on the stage, Dawn getting to wear a $1,200 dress. Like, it's bigger than that. This is about something way more. And that's the thing that keeps me going. And I would tell anybody who is an executive director that doesn't have a feeling that the cause is bigger than them, get out now. Because this is about your ego and you need to get out now.
I love that.
This is bigger than me every day.
I love that, Dawn. I love that. I really do. You're right. If it's your ego, you shouldn't be there. I love that you have that connection. And what makes me sad about being an executive director, CEO, whatever you want to call the title, is that you do lose that connection to your kids or whomever you're serving, your clients, your patients, whatever it is, because you're in an office and you're dealing with like the cash flow and the grants and you're not doing the work anymore, right? And so I do think that matters. Like, we have to take a minute and go to that classroom or go to the hospital or go to wherever it is and like meet our clients. Because if we don't do that, how do you keep going?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got to get out there. You got to know them and they got to know you. Like, tell them your name, tell them what you do, see if they have questions. But I really genuinely try to keep one foot in the program so that I understand what's happening, right? Because I can't be so far removed that they become numbers and not actual human beings with lives. I get to know the girls. I created a leadership group that advises us. And so I love that. That's important. If you don't know the name of your clients, unless they have come and spoken at one of your galas, then you're doing something wrong. You don't need to know the name of all of them. I mean, I serve 1,000 kids. I can't know the name of everyone, but I should be able to name 5, right? And tell their story.
100%. That is always something that I think anybody listening to this show, no matter what position, even if you're a board member, gotta know who you're serving.
Yep.
So I have one last question that I thought was pretty hilarious that I wanted to share with you. So this is from Bobby, and Bobby lives in Iowa. And Bobby's question: my board chair just asked me to create a succession plan. Should I be worried about my job?
Bobby, no. You should not be worried about your job. So I'm gonna tell you the true answer. I'm gonna tell you the real deal. I don't know if Matt gonna use it, but he's welcome to use it. And then I'm gonna give you the formal answer. So the real deal answer is this: your board chair read an article or went to a training and they talked about succession planning, and then she got excited, jumped in and said, we need to start doing succession planning. Now, your board chair handled it wrong. Should never have come to the ED and said, I need you to develop a succession plan, because your feeling is exactly what it will evoke. What should have happened was that they had a conversation about internal growth and leadership, and then had a conversation about the hit by the bus theory, and then said, as a board, we want to start to prepare for this and create a plan with you. And she should have just been honest and said, I read an article, I went to a training, because that's the only time that usually board members come to you and start talking about succession planning. So that's number one. So that would be the real deal answer, right? Now I'm gonna give you the formal, ED answer here, which is no, don't be afraid of succession planning. We want the next generation to be able to grow into leadership roles. We want our team to continue to grow. A succession planning is not about you moving out tomorrow. Succession planning is about who are you nurturing and preparing internally to move into leadership, and do you see someone, and if not, then what needs to happen? Succession planning can take years. And the other thing is that it's a hit by the bus theory. It's what happens if you're gone tomorrow. Is there a plan in place? Who knows what? And so it's bigger than just replacing you. Like, that's not really what it is about, even though that's the way that a lot of times it's advertised. It's about, are there systems in place that people know what to do to continue the organization running at the same level in which it is running now if you are not there?
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what succession planning is about. It's not about the ED specifically, but it's scary to hear. Trust me, I understand. It is scary to hear, but that's what it is about.
I love that. I love that question. I thought that question was awesome. I think that the succession plan is really important, but we get a lot of questions about equity and inclusion. And I think really one of the most important things personally, when I was an executive director, what was really important for me was training my staff, including my staff, sharing them how budget worked, really working with them in terms of where they wanted to go and how to get them up and grow them in the organization or help them go to another job. And so when we're looking at DEI and we're really looking at that equity piece, what does equity mean for you running your nonprofit?
Yeah. So let me first of all tell you that this is my jam right here. I'm a social justice girl. I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. That is my background. That's literally what I've done for 25 years. So I come from a different perspective on this work because I'm looking at it from like, this is literally what I do, right? And so, to be very honest, I don't even like the whole idea of DEI because it feels it has become this checklist that people seem to need to check off, and they're not really looking at the justice component of it. And I'm more justice centric. And so, if you can't get to the justice centric component, then yes, include DEI is important. And so, I'm gonna give you sort of the levels of it and what equity means. Diversity is just about who's in the room. That's it, right? And so, you could have a diverse group, but they may not be equitable and they may not be inclusive. And honestly, you're not serving anyone. You're probably doing more harm than good by having a diverse group in the room, right? Equity is different than equality. And people get this wrong so much. I literally just had someone say to me, it would be inequitable if I refunded you for the service that you were unhappy about. And I said, no, it would be equal, but it's actually equitable. And here's why. Now figure it out, right? Then I got my money, but I refunded, but I had to educate them first, right? So, and I literally had to break down that equality is simply about making sure that everyone has the same, right? And equality has not served us. And so Brown, when we talk about separate but equal, that was actually equality. Everybody got to go to school, right? But when you walked in those schools, it looked different, right? And that's the difference between equality and equity. Equity is about making sure that people have what they need in order to be successful. And so that may not be equal all the time because it has not been equal. The world has not been equal. And so we can now come in and be like, okay, we just wanted to all be, equal for everyone. So if I give this person a raise, I got to give that person a raise. And if I do this, and that's not how it works. That's not what equity is about. It is about looking at and identifying what is needed, right? By each individual in order to be successful, in order to level the playing field. And you can't level the playing field if you're trying to give everyone the same thing. Then those who have will always have more, right? And so that is very important. And then when we talk about inclusion is really where it's at, right? So inclusion is about making sure not that you just have different people in the room, but are their voices included in the decisions that are being made? Are their voices included in how you are serving, the language that you use, and the approaches that you take, right? That's what that means. And for me, I don't even focus on equity. I focus on justice, right? So I'm justice centric, right? Which is the next level. That's literally breaking down barriers. And so, I think that for me, it's extremely important. And we can't do it by just bringing women to the table. We can't do it by just bringing people of color to the table because the table wasn't designed for us. So when we talk about equity, we're talking about redesigning a table. We're talking about redesigning it completely so that it is for us. We can't say we're just going to bring, LGBTQIA plus people to the table. We're not going to just, that already exists. It wasn't designed for them. It wasn't designed for a transgender person, right? We got to redesign the table completely. And you can't keep giving people janky chairs at the table. I'm really big about that. Yo, come on to the table. We're going to give you a janky old chair that's wobbling the whole time. And then we're going to give you a throne, right? But everybody got a chair at the table, right? Like that's not what it's about. So, and it's not about giving everybody the janky chair. It's about making sure that everybody has the throne, right? And so I think that one of the things that's important for organizations to think about is one, how are you serving your team? And then how are you serving your community? And are you doing that differently, right? When it comes to the people at the table. One of the things I hate to hear is when people say, these kids, those kids that we serve, and I'm like, so you are separated from that, right? And your team hears that. And I hear that a lot from, to be honest, white men use that term a lot, and a lot of white women use it. And I'm like, but I hear it more from white men. And I'm like, your team hears that. They hear you saying these and those, and that's what they hear when you're talking about them, right? So one is listening to your language, making sure that you're honoring everything from pronouns to the races and the cultures that are there. Don't tell Spanish people to speak English because you don't understand. Maybe it wasn't for you to be a part of that conversation. Shut up, move on. Like, you know what I mean? Embrace that. And it really is about making sure that you have to look at who is at the top, who is making decisions, and who's included when you're serving communities, and when you're whoever that community is, and is that community a part of the decision making. For me, having young people a part of the decision making is extremely important. We are a youth-led organization. It's one of the things I shifted as an organization when I came in. And so that for me is why this is so important, because you cannot grow as a nonprofit and be at your best unless you have differences at the table. And it's okay. It is very scary. It's nerve-wracking. So that means sometimes you got to shut your mouth and listen. Sometimes you have to elevate other voices that are not yours. That is important to this work. But we cannot get to where we claim to want to be. And everyone's vision is about making something better. We can't do that if we stay a monolith, if we stay focused on just one thing. We have to know that there are so many voices that deserve to be there. And we got to be quiet and listen to them, even when we don't agree.
Listen, I said at the beginning of the show, you're one of my favorite people. Like, come on, lady. I'm gonna like record that and stick it on our website because like people don't get it. They don't get it. And I love that idea of just redesigning the table. That's awesome. I really do. I thank you for that because I hope that if people listen to this, that's something that they take away, right? Because it really is justice. You are correct. Thank you for that answer. I hope people hear that. And I think too, when you're thinking about being an executive director or even a board member, really looking at that is really important. I think we have a lot of people who, when they hire us, they're like, yeah, we want you to hire people of color, but they don't mean it. They're just saying it, just like you said, to check a box. And it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. So
Yep.
I love that. Thank you. Okay, so last question from an audience member, and then I want you to talk about EmpowHER because I loved your event and I think people need to know about it to hopefully give to your organization. Last question is from, they didn't actually give me a name. All right, so I don't have a name, but this is the last question. I'm having major board issues. I don't feel like my board is supporting me and I don't know what to do. Should I call in a consultant? Or is it just time for me to leave?
Well, first of all, welcome to the club. A lot of executive directors feel that way. I've been blessed to have a board that is supportive this time around at EmpowHER. I cannot say that that has been my experience in the past. And so, everyone has that experience. That should not be the thing that says I'm leaving, right? If they're just not being supportive. Now, if they're being racist, if they're being sexist, if they're just being all out rude and wrong, then that's a whole different thing that we need to talk about. I have left because of those things from a board. But just when it comes to support, we have the ideal of what we want in a board. And the truth of the matter is that if we got our ideal, we would probably shift it. Because I always say, I don't want you too involved in my work anyway. I need the freedom to do what I do. Board members have to be trained too. And it's important that they are supported and that they get regular training to understand their roles. And if they're not getting that training, they're not going to know, because most board members are people, there's not too many professional board members that join nonprofit boards, right? They're professional board members that join corporate boards where they get paid, but they're volunteering their time. And so it's a lot of them, they're new to being on a board. They've been on a board, several different boards, and a lot of times, it's time for them to probably retire. And so you have, a high group of people who are volunteering, they're passionate about it, the work, and then they need you to guide them as the CEO. Like as the executive director, you got to guide your board and you got to tell them what you need. I made some shifts with the board. It took me a while to do, but I made some shifts around just how I report and how my program team reports. And so in my executive report, I say, like, these are the achievements, these are the challenges. And then I say, this is what I need from you, right? And those are three key things there. Because sometimes they started focusing on brainstorming answers to the challenges. And I was like, I already got these solved. I'm telling you that this is the challenge that we're faced. This is not where I need you. This is what I need you to do. And this is what we're going to discuss today, right? And so I would say that it's important for you to take on the role of guiding your board, supporting your board. And if they're not here, if you're not being supported, what is it that you need? If you don't have an executive coach, find one, find out, because you may not know. And that's going to be important. And then the other part of it is you might have to bring in a consultant. Sometimes board members need to hear from someone other than you, right? Because you are still an employee in their minds. And so they don't see you as an expert. And that's terrible when that happens, but sometimes that is the case. And so sometimes they need to hear somebody else say it to them who, and so you may have to bring in a consultant. But what I would say is figure out what you need first. What is it that you want from your board? What kind of support do you want? Because if you just tell them I need to be supported, they're going to start micromanaging. So figure out what kind of support you want so you can get very specific about that. And then figure out what it is that you need. Those two things might be different. So figure it out. And that your coach can help you with. And then you can figure out, do I need to bring in a consultant or not?
Hey Matt, hey Dawn, so sorry to interrupt. Listening to Dawn talk, though, about the importance of guiding and supporting your board, I felt we would be remiss not to tell our audience about cause coaching. What is cause coaching? Take a listen. Are you looking for ways to channel your passions in service of the greater good? Or are you an organization that is looking for passionate people to serve on your board of directors? If so, you should check out Cause Coaching, Envision Consulting's new subscription-based board recruiting and development tool. After years of working with more than 1,000 nonprofit clients across the country, we've curated a series of board development resources that elevate nonprofit boards at every stage of growth, from recruitment to training. Services include personal coaching, live training, video and resource libraries, and entree to CauseCupid mixers, matching board members to organizations. Subscribe, learn, and be on your way to building a better board. Visit envisionnonprofit.com to find out more. And now back to this episode with Dawn Brown of EmpowHER.
Dawn, why won't you let me steal you? One of these days, I'm gonna get you. Okay, last question, and then I want you to tell people about EmpowHER, and then I'm going to let you go for the night because I'm also 3 glasses in. So truly, I mean it. And this is not like, I don't want your board to get nervous. I don't want your staff to get nervous. This is not that. But how will you know when it is time for you to leave?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about this the other day, actually. For me personally, I will know when, at the very least, the short-term vision that I have has been accomplished. And when I can see and feel comfortable and confident that the long-term vision will be accomplished, whether I'm there or not, that's when I will know. Not just like the certain milestones, right? But the real true vision of it that I came in with, because I'm not trusting anybody with my baby until I know that we've been able to accomplish certain things. For me, that's it.
Okay. And you let me know so I can take you somewhere else. Maybe the best placement I make. So please tell everybody about EmpowHER and why they should go right now to your website and make a gift.
Yes, EmpowHER Institute. We've been around for 20 years. We serve an average of 1,000 girls a year, primarily Black and Latina girls from low-income communities. And our goal is to get our girls college and career ready by providing them with the resources, the mentoring, and the skills necessary and access in order to break systemic barriers that have historically impeded Black and brown girls from reaching their fullest potential. We believe that the best way to break generational cycles of poverty is through college and career readiness. And in our approach to it, we provide social emotional learning, mentoring, skills-based learning, and case management, as well as a wraparound services for our girls and emergency services. And so that's what we do. That's who we are. We are very innovative in our work. We have very innovative programs. Some of them are the first and only of its kind in the country. I got girls that are certified scuba divers, 11-year-olds. I mean, we do some amazing work out in the world, and we are having amazing results. 100% of our middle schoolers matriculate into high school, and 100% of our high schools not only graduate, but they are accepted into college. So if you want to make an impact, not just on LA, but on the world, then EmpowHER Institute is where you want to make that gift. And truly, it will make a immediate impact, and it will make a real and true impact on our work, because we are still a small nonprofit that works really hard for every dollar, and we make sure that that money goes back into the communities in which we serve. So please go to www.empowher, which is EmpowHER.org, and make a donation.
I was actually just about to ask you for that website, so you beat me to it. That's what makes you such a good leader. Dawn, I love everything about you, and I am so happy that you did this show. Thank you very much. I really mean it. Is there anything else, anything I didn't ask you, anything else that you think is important for either somebody who wants to be an executive director or somebody who's done being an executive director? Is there any other kind of like words of wisdom that you feel like maybe somebody should hear?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it. I'm not even gonna lie. When I saw you were doing the podcast, I was like, wait a minute, why haven't I been invited to this podcast? I'm gonna take it personal. So thank you. But my words of wisdom is this: if you are interested in becoming an executive director, I would say soak in as much information from leadership now and stop taking everything personal and trying to judge every decision, and really ask questions as to why decisions are made. And then know that there's another side of the coin that you may or may not have access to, but that the decisions are not made willy-nilly. Decisions are made with true thought, right? And so if you are interested in being an ED, start there. Start asking questions, start learning, be clear about what it is that you want to do. But in that, make sure that instead of judging, that you are really sitting down and learning, because there is another side to the coin. We are thinking very fully when we are making decisions, and there are a lot of things that go into that. If you are at a place where you are thriving, keep thriving as an ED, but keep learning yourself and keep growing, and make sure that you are prepared to weather storms. And if you feel like you're ready to move on as an ED, then by all means, do so. Make room for the next generation, but make sure that somebody is there to take over your baby. Like, do not leave and then don't have someone who's been trained and prepared and ready, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up back there, or you're going to end up frustrated. And so make sure that it is that you have built, that's the succession part of it, that you have prepared others, built your army to take over. And then the last thing I'm going to say is take a vacation. I am at a place where I'm like, I need to start taking care of myself better. I need to take a vacation. And when you're at that place, know it, but don't wait until you get to that place. I think as an ED, we need to start really looking at making sure when I came in, I negotiated more vacation because I knew what it meant to be an ED. And then I wasn't taking it. And now I'm like, I need to start taking my time. Every 3 months, I'm committed in 2024 and beyond to take some time off, even if it's just a few days, because you got to take care of yourself. You're in this for the long haul. And the only way you can do that is to take care of yourself.
Well, Dawn, thank you. Thank God for your grandma, for your teacher, for making you who you are. Truly, you're making an enormous impact in the world. And from a nonprofit person to another nonprofit person, truly thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that you put into your recruitment and how you advocate for the leaders and who you think is the right person. Even when we don't get the role, you advocate, and it makes people trust you and have faith in you, and you're real and you're honest. And I appreciate that. I value that.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Matt.
So what'd you think of this amazing episode with Dawn Brown?
Again, Dawn Brown is just absolutely phenomenal. Everything out of her mouth was quote-worthy, and it was so much fun to edit that, even though it was such a hard task. Because like I said, what do you take out? But Matt, I had a quick question for you. I'm noticing that you're holding a small bottle of booze, and I just wondered, is that also one of your airplane booze collection pieces?
So here's what I've learned when you fly. Always be really nice to the flight attendant, of course. Ask them how their day is going, get their name, all the things that you would normally do when you want things. And then as they give you booze, sometimes they give you an extra one, and maybe you get even more than one. And then you take them home and enjoy them for a later date. And so the answer is yes. I may be using one of those little tiny bottles. And yeah, sometimes you need a little pick-me-up to get through the day. Sometimes you just do.
No doubt. But let's back up for just 1 second, because I want to make sure our listener got this very keen insight into you, Matt, which is the advice was be nice to your flight attendant, get to know who they are, what their name is, ask them about themselves, anything you might say to someone you want something from. Here, I thought you were just saying be nice because, it's the decent thing to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I never said ever that I'm a good person. I never said those words. What I always have said is I'm a really good fundraiser. And as a really good fundraiser, you do what you got to do to get what you want. I just want to say, yes, I do care about my flight attendants. I do. And I also enjoy the free booze. Now you've learned my secret, my listener out there. Be nice, get some free booze.
You know, Matt, you're nothing if not just really honest about who you are. It's unapologetic.
And resourceful. That's what this show is. It is resourceful.
It is resourceful. And on that note, I do hope that all of our listeners are using our show as a resource. If you are in nonprofit right now, or you are looking to get into nonprofit, our show has something for everyone. We hope you are subscribing, passing along the word to other friends of yours who might be looking for information in this space. And you can find us on the website at envisionnonprofit.com/podcast, or as Matt likes to point out, on our Instagram page with 19 underscores. That is nonprofit_on_the_rocks.
And so when the listener gets mad at me for paying you in quarters, as a reminder, you really did create an Instagram account with 18 underscores. Remember, this whole season is about nonprofits on the actual rocks. And our next episode is going to be a phenomenal show with some really great questions from our audience. And as always, Ashley, I have talked about this since day one. I really like it when people DM me. And so it'd be nice if any of you out there want to DM me with some questions. We will get them on the show.
Take care, everyone. See you next episode.